Employees and entrepreneurs are not the same. And that may be obvious from a perspective of the fact that an employee goes to work for somebody, an entrepreneur, as most people think, goes to work for themselves. But there's a lot more deeper aspects to this. So I want you to follow me on this very short journey. If you consider an investor someone who puts their resources into something with the hope and intention to get some form of a return out of that vehicle, that person can be an investor with an employee mindset, or they could be an investor who operates like an entrepreneur. And it's important to distinguish these two differences because it helps us understand that employees and entrepreneurs are not the same. Now, if you're an investor who thinks like an employee, then you're going to be looking for certain kind of things. For example, one of the things you're going to be looking for, which is typical of an employee, is a safe, if we put it this way, return. Typically, employees go to work for somebody and there's one person that they're attempting to please. Now, an employee may have hundreds of customers, hundreds of clients, hundreds of, front-facing people who they engage with in their work. However, they know that their job typically tends to rise and fall, or they assume that their job typically tends to rise and fall based on the decisions being made by their boss or employer. So as a result, employees are only often thinking about one person, that's their employer. Now, entrepreneurs, by virtue of the fact that they may serve more than one client, let's say you serve 3 clients, let's say you're just starting out, and you serve 3 clients as an entrepreneur, you very quickly start to learn as an entrepreneur that the world, your financial safety or security, if you want to use that word, is not based on one person. Now, what happens many a times, and I'll share this because some of you may be experiencing this, you may be experiencing this now in your own life, you can start an entrepreneurial endeavor and think that you're an entrepreneur, but truly, genuinely be an employee. And you can typically see when that happens. And one of the hallmarks of this, and I was speaking to some of my coaching clients in our roundtable, which is a high-level business coaching program. We were talking about this specifically over the last few weeks, and this was part of the reason why I thought I should share this. But in essence, one of the clear characteristics, one of the clear hallmarks of an entrepreneurial endeavor being operated by an employee is the fact that you tend to lopside your business on one client. And what does that mean? That means the majority of your revenue is coming from one organization, one individual, one client who you serve. Now, why does that happen? It happens because that's the employee model, and maybe sometimes you're so used to it, you don't know how to break out of it. So what I'm saying here, which I think is fundamental to where we're going to go in this conversation for us, is you can be an investor who approaches investing like an employee. You can be an entrepreneur who approaches entrepreneurship like an employee. You can be an influencer. You can have someone who has a massive audience, but approaches your massive audience like an employee. Samuel, how can that happen? If you got a massive audience of 100,000 subscribers or 100,000 followers, how do you approach it like an employee? Well, you stay laser focused on the one client who is maybe for many of you guys, the brand who gives you the brand deal, right? So those kind of characteristics, like when I analyze someone's business, when my coaching clients come to me and they say, look, Samuel, I'm looking to do this with my revenue over the next 12 months. I'm looking to do this with my clientele over the next 12 months. I'm looking to do this with my services and products over the next 12 months. Like one of the fastest characteristics that I can observe is whether that particular person is operating like an entrepreneur or like an employee. Now, let me give you a characteristic in the entrepreneurship world so it helps you see the other side of this. Entrepreneurship is the endeavor of solving a specific problem in a marketplace. Now, look at these 2 key factors. We solve specific problems in a marketplace, okay? So the specificity is in the problem. It's not in the person, okay? And we do it in a marketplace. And most of us know a market is a place where things are being traded, which by virtue of the fact that things are being traded, it means a market can't be a market of one. That is not a market. Okay, that's actually a monopoly, right? Mono meaning one and poly meaning many. Monopoly, one controlling many. So that's not a market, that's a monopoly. So In order to be operating like an entrepreneur, one of the things you will very quickly realize as an entrepreneur, when you are engaging as an entrepreneur in entrepreneurial endeavors, you'll very quickly realize that to be an effective entrepreneur, you don't have all your ducks in one basket. You don't have all your chips in one bowl. You don't, whatever the analogies are. You can't. Why? Because you are serving a specific problem or set of problems to a marketplace, an inner marketplace, which means that you understand that the value you bring to the table is your solution to the problem to a whole market. Now, a whole market is not everybody, because if, as Dr. Myron Golden often says, if something's for everybody, it's actually for nobody, right? So you don't get success by attempting to solve everybody's problem in a marketplace. You garner success by being known as a specialist in the solution of a specific problem to a specific marketplace. But nonetheless, it's a marketplace. And a characteristic of a marketplace is it must have more than one party trading in order for it to be a marketplace, okay? And often it has many people trading. So why is this relevant? This is relevant because if you're unaware of this, you may be attempting to raise your influence, build an audience, without understanding how to do that effectively and serve that market with your solution. This is important because if you are an investor, you may be attempting to invest in real estate, property, assets, crypto, stock market, whatever your thing is, without understanding the entrepreneurial mindset over the employee mindset. The entrepreneurial mindset is I'm here to serve a market. In one of my most recent videos, I spoke about Google serving their audience by giving free email addresses. Now, this is not my attempt to say to you that the only way you can serve is by giving stuff for free. That's not what I believe. That's not the reality of this conversation. The reality of this conversation is that is entrepreneurial mindset. It's to come to the marketplace with some solution to serve the audience, to serve the market. Whereas the employee mindset is to be served. And because it's to be served, the employee tends to look for one person or one entity to provide that service. And they often focus a lot of their energy on serving or pleasing that particular employer or organization or individual. So how do we change this? There's so many ways we can change this, but I want to talk about something that's super important for you before we even talk about how we change this. And the thing that's super important for you is this is the reason why side hustles do not work. And I know there's many people out there who will say, oh, but Samuel, I've just started this side hustle. Like, Samuel, do you think I should do a side hustle, right? A lot of the time, like it's been a long time, but a lot of the time, in a previous time, people would approach me and ask me my thoughts on their desire to do a side hustle. And specifically when I first started coaching people in terms of property, a lot of people would ask me, like, should I do property as a side hustle? And most of us know that the very nature of property as an asset class or industry is one where the majority of people who are engaged in property in any way, shape or form are doing it on the side. So it often comes up the question of, should I do property on the side? And I'm here to say to you that because there's a clear distinguishable difference between entrepreneurship and employment, the entrepreneurial mindset and the employee mindset, or being an entrepreneur and being an employee, this is the reason why the side hustle doesn't work. Because in order to have an effective side hustle, you're effectively attempting to be an entrepreneur on the side and an employee when you don't want to hide, right? Most of your time, full time. And it's not that that doesn't work because it can't work. It doesn't work because the only way to make it work at its highest level of success is if you approach both with the same mindset. Because if you approach both with the same mindset, what effectively is happening is you're increasing your ability to practice that mindset more often. And as John C. Maxwell has been noted to say, practice doesn't make perfect, practice just makes permanent. So if you understand that what you practice is going to become permanent, if you are practicing 80 hours a week being an employee, and then you're practicing 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week being an entrepreneur, that is not going to give you the successive reps to be extremely successful in your entrepreneurial endeavors. And thus, as a result, something's going to have to give. Let me just leave it like that. You can paint the picture because you've probably been in the situation of what I'm talking about already. So I don't assume I'm saying anything new to you. So if you have friends who are often saying to you, how comes these side hustles don't work? I tried this side hustle, it didn't work. I tried that side hustle, it didn't work. And, I had to just rely on my employment work, right? A lot of the time, people don't realize the reason that's happening to them is because they're attempting to use the employee mindset to get success in an entrepreneurship endeavor. And that cannot work because the entrepreneurship endeavor requires the entrepreneurship mindset in order to be successful. It requires the entrepreneurship activity, the entrepreneurship energy, the entrepreneurship endeavors in order for it to produce what it can produce and fulfill for you what you're expecting it to fulfill for you. So this is why the side hustle doesn't work. And as I said in one of my previous videos, I think it was a little short or a reel that I put on Instagram about a year ago. The reason why the side hustle doesn't work is because any person who ever gets any real success in a side hustle cuts off the main hustle and makes the side hustle their main hustle. Why is that the case? Because they realize this thing's a sure banker and this thing creates more opportunity than the job. Okay. Now, what's interesting about when people feel like their side hustle works, because for a lot of people, they don't even need from the side hustle income replacing revenue. Even though I've helped a lot of people achieve that, I've recognized again and again, most people don't actually need to replace their income from the side hustle to go all in on the side hustle. What most people need is what I often call with my clients, the proof of concept. They need to make enough revenue from the thing they're attempting to do on the side to realize it has the potential, the realized potential, the materialized potential to replace their income. And this is where this is very interesting because if you go and study entrepreneurs who have gone into entrepreneurship out of coming from a job, you will find many of them actually leave their jobs before they replace their workplace income. There are going to be the exceptional few, the talented few, who replace their job income, but many of them are going to leave before. Why? Because they're going to realize, hold on a minute, are you telling me in 80 hours, let's say for example, in 80 hours in a week, I generate, let's say, £4,000 in a month. But in this 5-hour-a-week side hustle, something pulled off and I generated £1,000 this month. Okay? What happens when you do the maths on that is you very quickly realize, okay, so 5 hours times 4 weeks, let's roughly say the month is 4 weeks, is 20 hours. If in 20 hours I can generate £1,000 doing the side hustle, then if I times that by 8 and gave up the 80 hours I'm currently doing, the 80 hours of employment that's producing me my £4,000 per month, I could probably hit £8,000 a month doing the side hustle by turning that 10 hours into times 8, 80 hours. So this is very simple maths, and it's maths that most people do when they're attempting to do side hustles and realizing it doesn't work and either giving up or, scratching through and getting a bit of gold and realizing, hold on a minute, what am I doing this full-time job thing? I should go all in. Now, the reason why this is key is because I mentioned we want to talk about how we can change this. And the last statement I made is the key to how to change this. It's going all in. Okay, that's really the only way to change it. Now, Samuel, what does going all in look like? I'm going to give you 3 examples of what going all in looks like so you can make the adjustment, you can make the change yourself, so you can be in the best position to win for yourself. The first thing that going all in looks like is switching to an entrepreneurship mindset regardless of what you do. So you can stay employed. There's nothing wrong with having a job, okay? I've worked many jobs. And many people have worked many jobs. And when I say that, I mean many people who you look up to today financially and say, wow, like look at this great entrepreneur, or look at this great business mogul, or look at this great leader or pioneer in their field, right? Having a job is not the problem, okay? But having an employee mindset as you approach your job is a problem. If you read the book, Business Secrets from the Bible, written by Rabbi Lapin, one of the things he talks about, he tells his story of how he met a woman in a church when he was doing a particular teaching and training. And at the end of the service, him and his wife spoke with her and spoke about kind of the industry she was in, etc., and what she did. And he gave her some advice. And basically, one of the concepts he speaks about in that chapter of the book, he speaks about as an employee, you should see your end users, your customers, your business, your employers' customers as your customers. Okay, so you shouldn't see all of those 15,000 clients you engage with over the year as, oh, they buy stuff from my company or they buy stuff from the company I work for. You should see them as they are your clients. They are your employees, right? Because what would happen then is then you start to get in tune with what I'm calling that entrepreneurship mindset. You start to get in tune with the fact that you are providing a solution for a marketplace and not just for an individual. You're providing a solution for an industry or a pocket of an industry rather than providing a solution for a particular business. And what this does is this switches the way we see value in our mind. It switches the way we provide value in our mind, and it switches the way we come to the marketplace, not just in our mind, but literally in terms of how we physically engage. So what you start to see is one way to go all in is to go all in on the mindset, go all in on the mentality, i.e., regardless of what you're doing with your time, go all in. So if you do have a full-time job or a part-time job, approach that full-time job or part-time job as an entrepreneur, as a person who's coming to solve problems, as a problem solver inside of that entity. That's one way to go all in. The second way to go all in is literally go all in, cut ties, sever ties. Okay. Now this is not recommended for most people. Okay. And this video is for educational purpose, right? We're just having an educational conversation. This is not advice. I'm not telling you what to do. But a second way that you can go all in is by saying, you know what, I am going to burn the bridges. I'm going to set a light to the ships. Like, if it's going to be, it's up to me kind of mentality. And that is literally walking away from your job and saying, I'm going all in. Why are you going all in? Because sometimes going in all in physically is the only way we get to really go all in mentally. Because a lot of the time, the way our minds are, they're wired to go for the path of least resistance. And if you are spending 40 hours, 50 hours, up to 80 hours a week in an employment environment, it's very easy for your mind to stay in employment mode. And that makes it hard for you to do the switching of your mind when you're trying to do something on the side or when you're trying to do something behind, okay? So I would encourage you to think about the different ways you can go all in. First way being go all in with your mentality. Approach anything you're doing. Let's assume it's a full-time job, but approach that as an entrepreneur. How can you provide solutions in this marketplace? How can you provide solutions in this industry? How can you best serve the clients and clientele that you thought previously your business serves, but now you realize that you actually serve as a representative of the business you work for? That's one. Second way to go all in is to literally burn the boats, cut the bridges, and go all in, i.e., remove yourself from the environments that demand upon you to be an employee and allow you to be an entrepreneur. And I know that one's hard because some of you may be saying in your mind, but Samuel, the challenge with that is that I have to pay my bills and I get my bills funded by this work or this job, okay? So a way, let me not call it some advice, but a way that can be done is by following kind of like the Dave Ramsey model, but building in an emergency fund. Building in an emergency fund, start with raising yourself £1,000, $1,000, €1,000, whatever it is for you, behind closed doors. So you've got that as your cushion. And then from there, build that up into what I think Dave Ramsey recommends 3 to 6 months after that. Build up a 3 to 6 month kind of war chest where you feel comfortable to have some runway and then go all in, right? But the key is to go all in because here's the thing, right? You can't ever say to yourself, you know what would be the result of you going all in if you've never gone all in. And this is something to just think about. Because sometimes we don't go all in, but we give up as though we went all in. And then we tell the tale and the story as though we went all in. But we get to that year later on when we look back, and you've been there. I know you've been there. We get to that year when we look back and we say, if only I went all in. The reason why you can say, if only I went all in, is because you know, hand on heart, you didn't go all in. So don't do that to yourself. Don't give yourself a raw deal. Like, help yourself at the highest level. And the way you can do that is by making that decision to go all in. All right. So let's go into the third way you can go all in. The third way you can go all in, which I believe is the safest way to go all in, because I heard at the age of 20 from a coach, why take 70 years to learn what you can learn in 7 hours by reading the book of someone who had to take 70 years to be able to write the book? And what that made me realize is that we live in a world where people say experience is the best teacher, but they lied, because the best teacher is not your experience. The best teacher is actually to learn from the experiences of others. So another way to go all in is to make an investment into a coaching, mentoring, training, some form of a program that's going to set you up. Even an affiliate program. For those of you who do not know what an affiliate program is, an affiliate program is where you recommend a service or product to an audience or to a client base, which is fulfilled by a secondary party, the actual company who provide that service, okay? And even signing up with an affiliate program is valuable on your entrepreneurial journey. Why? Because you're going to learn how to sell. You're going to learn how to serve. You're going to learn how to meet the needs of a group of clients in a marketplace. And these are the key essential ingredients to be a successful entrepreneur. Yes, there's the innovation piece. There's the creation piece. There's the piece of developing some kind of resource or service or product. That is another component which you can develop over time. But the most crucial component is not actually the ideation and the creation. And this is just me being very transparent. Why? Because there's a lot of people selling subpar products out there in the world and people are still buying it. Okay. Yes, we have Hermès bags that sell for £40,000 a piece. But we also have Marks and Spencer's bags that sell for £40 a piece. And I'm not saying Hermès and Marks and Spencer's are on par. That's not this. What I'm saying is the fact that both products can serve a market is evidence that the ideation and creation is not the essential part. The essential part are the ancillary skills that most people lack. The ability to market, the ability to sell, essentially the ability to serve an audience at a level where they feel seen, they feel heard, and they say, you know what, I want to buy this. This represents what I want to be in the world. This represents how I want to show up in the world. So this third way to go all in is to make an investment in yourself by making that investment through someone else. Finding someone who has an affiliate program, has a coaching program, has a training program, has a teaching program, has some kind of mentoring program where they can assist you to move further faster in your future in the field of entrepreneurship. Because what will happen is they will start to open your antennas to the entrepreneurial aspects of business, which are completely different to the employee aspects of business. Now, you might be asking yourself, Samuel, why are you really deep diving on this topic the way you are? One, because this is what I help my highest level clients with currently on our roundtable program, but because this is also where I see the biggest hole and hurdle for most people who are attempting to win financially, to create consistent and colossal cash flow so that they can change their future. And the reason I see this so often is because people fail to recognize that they've spent 5 years, 8 years, 9 years, 12 years, sometimes 30 years, 40 years building their employee muscle without having any thought process about the fact that they're going to need an entrepreneurial attitude in order to succeed in the thing they desire to succeed in. Now, I will say this as I close out. With the employee mindset, using the employee muscle, there's only so far you can go. Whatever industry you're in, this is the maths I had to do for myself when I was working in education. I realized in the schools I was working in, even if I got to the top of the quote unquote food chain I was in, the highest maximum salary I could perceive for myself as a salary, as an employee, was £200,000 per year as an executive head teacher. And when I realized that, I realized, well, the executive head teachers at that time who were on a salary of roughly £200,000 per year, they were usually in charge of like 5 different schools. So I did the maths for myself and I said to myself, well, hold on a minute. If I'm in charge of 5 schools and I'm generating £200,000 a year, what's my time look like? And I realized I would basically have absolutely no time in the week to do anything. No time to probably spend with my children, no time to spend with my wife, no time to even, the conceptual idea that came to me is I wouldn't have the time to spend the money that I would be making. Okay, so Clarks make shoes. Okay, I like Clarks shoes. I think they're, in terms of design, I think they're a great design, or a great design house for shoes. And you know, a pair of Clarks could cost you whatever, between £60, between £120, £150, right? Now, if you generate £200,000 a year, but when you wake up in the morning, you have to get to work at a certain time and you don't get to leave until a certain time, you make more than enough money to buy the shoes you want from Clarks, but you don't have any time to go buy the shoes you want from Clarks, which basically means you can't buy a pair of shoes, even though you make more than enough money to pay for the pair of shoes. And this was kind of like the epiphany I had, which made me realize I need to start developing a different mindset, and I need to start developing a different muscle than the employee mindset and muscle, because using the employee mindset, using the employee muscle in the industry I was in, there's only so far I could go. Now, here's what's interesting. If you take that mindset and trade the employee mindset for the entrepreneurial mindset, I'm serving a marketplace, you take the employee muscle for an entrepreneurship muscle, and you go and serve a marketplace by solving a specific problem, what happens is very quickly, the ceiling on your income and revenue radically increases. It radically increases. And the reason it radically increases is for so many reasons. One of the reasons is because you get to choose your overheads. You get to choose whether you do it by, whether you deliver your service. Let's say you deliver a training service, right? You get to choose whether you deliver your training service using the latest Canon C100 camera, okay? And that's, again, I don't know if that's the latest Canon camera. It's probably not, but it's a camera that's very well known, right? For cinematography, etc. And those cameras, when brand new, are usually around £4,000, £5,000, okay? Years ago, they used to be even more. But like, let's say a £4,000, £5,000 camera to deliver your service, right? You get to choose. You get to choose if you use Google Meet or if you use Zoom technology. You get to choose. You get to choose. You get to choose your overheads. You get to choose whether you use a mic that you can just literally hold in your hand, or whether you use a whole micro production audio system which costs you thousands of rands, right? You get to choose, right? And by virtue of the fact you get to choose, you effectively get to decide the ceiling for yourself. So there's a lot said. What I'd love for you to do is let me know in the comments whether or not you've recognized the difference between an entrepreneurship mindset and an employee mindset in your life, and based on what we've shared in this video, what your thoughts are, so we can start having an actual conversation in the comments. With that being said, remember, small keys open big doors. Sammy I Can Win is signing out. Good day, God bless. Let's go. See you on the next video.